By October of 1968, the singer Cass Elliot was about to make her solo debut at the Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. The contract was unusual and very profitable. The woman would perform 12 shows per night for 3 weeks, earning a sum of $40,000 a week. However, her incredible voice and talent seemed not to be enough. Despite being an exceptional artist, the criticism about her physical appearance had undermined her confidence and affected her deeply. So much so that she subjected herself to absolutely restrictive diets. How restrictive? Well, some even forced her to fast for more than 4 days a week. The last of these, aimed at producing a significant weight loss before her performance in Las Vegas, had led her to lose nearly 50 kilos in 6 months. However, the inhuman regimen caused her to end up hospitalized with a stomach ulcer and throat problems. These conditions were treated with a sustained intake of milk and cream, which caused her to regain more than half of the weight she had lost. Clearly, these imbalances were not helping her health. Even during the long-awaited concert in Las Vegas, she could be seen sadly disoriented and vomiting blood, which led her to cancel the subsequent tour. As time went by, the artist would continue to be troubled by her appearance, pressured by the relentless beauty standards imposed by the industry and by society. In fact, those episodes of vomiting blood and fainting began to happen more and more frequently. By 1974, she would end up collapsing. She collapsed in the television studio of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, having to cancel her television appearance to be taken to a hospital. But the singer later downplayed the incident, saying it was just simple exhaustion. In July of that same year, at the height of her solo career, a 32-year-old Cass Elliot. She gave 2 weeks of completely sold-out concerts at the iconic London Palladium in the United Kingdom. After the concert on the 27th, she called her former bandmate from the Mamas and the Papas, Michelle Phillips, on the phone. She wanted to express her excitement about the great ovation she had received that very night. No one imagined that 24 hours later, that happiness would be replaced by deep sorrow. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. What was Cass Elliot's career like, and what difficulties did she have to face? Is it true that, because of her overweight, they didn't want her to join the Mamas and the Papas? Why do people say she choked on a ham sandwich? And what were the real reasons behind her death? Is it true that the floor of the apartment where she died is cursed? To answer these questions, we need to travel back to July 29, 1974, the day she died. Mama Cass. Ellen Naomi Cohen was born on September 19, 1941, in Baltimore, Maryland, United States. At the tender age of 6, she suffered an outbreak of ringworm, a skin infection caused by fungus. Because her mother was pregnant and the risk of contagion was too high, the family decided to send her to her grandparents' home. There, Ellen began to spend her days while she recovered from the illness. There, she also had a typical experience of children who receive their grandparents' affection. They overfed her. Although this gesture, as often happens, was well-intentioned, the reality is that little Ellen was soon deeply affected by it. Because it was then that she began her battle against being overweight. She returned to her parents' house shortly after, having gained a few kilos during her time in high school. The doctors even went so far as to prescribe her dexedrine, an amphetamine that was used at the time to suppress appetite and as a result cause weight loss. It was during those years that she started developing her artistic side. Her voice stood out, and her passion for acting led her to enthusiastically participate in her school's theater plays. Although this talent remained rather hidden due to a sad reality, Ellen faced criticism because of her appearance, and this made her feel uncomfortable. Even though behind the scenes she taught her classmates how to sing, dance, and perform, Kansi was never the one to go on stage, afraid of being judged for her appearance. During that time, she adopted the nickname Cass after actress Peggy Cass, which stayed with her for life. Once she finished her studies, she added it to her new name, another one in tribute to a friend who had died in a car accident, Elliot. In this way, Ellen Cullen would come to be known as Cass Elliot, unlike Ellen Cullen. She gained some self-confidence, at least enough to leave her home in Maryland and move to New York, where she intended to audition for professional roles in musicals. Had she made a deal with her parents? If she didn't achieve success with her music in 5 years, she would return home to study a career considered more respectable, like medicine. But her determination was relentless. As she used to say, she was totally convinced she would become the most famous fat woman that ever existed. At 21 years old, Cass managed to get a role in the touring company of the Music Man. And although she competed for the role of Miss Marmalstein in the play I Can Get It For You Wholesale, she was ultimately beaten by another rising star, Barbra Streisand. Visibly disappointed at that moment, Elliot even confessed to a close friend that there didn't seem to be many roles for a naive girl who weighed 200 pounds. But something in particular was booming in New York's Greenwich Village, a famous Manhattan neighborhood known for its bohemian, artistic, and alternative culture. In folk music circles, the young woman met singers Tim Rose and John Brown. The three of them started performing under the name The Triumvirate. In 1963, James Hendrix replaced Brown, and the trio would go on to be called the Big Three. During that same year, unexpectedly, Cass would marry Hendrix. Had the artist found love prematurely? Well, it wasn't quite like that, because it turned out to be a complete farce, with the sole purpose of preventing the musician from being drafted for the Vietnam War. The following year, Tim Rose's departure from the Big Three led Cass and Hendrix to join the Canadians Sal Janowski and Danny Doherty. From that union, the group The Monkwombs was born, which would last only a brief 8 months. After this last breakup, the woman performed as a solo artist for a while. Her old companion Doherty, meanwhile, was trying to persuade the singer and songwriter John Phillips to bring the vocalist into the group The New Journeyman. Until a fortuitous event made this decision easier, Cass was hit on the head by a copper pipe during a play. After suffering a concussion and being hospitalized, her vocal range was affected. The woman began to reach a higher vocal register. This was enough for Phillips to be convinced that he definitely wanted that new sound in the group. At least that's the story the woman made sure to spread, because later we'll talk about what really happened. Finally, in 1965, the singer joined the group The New Journeyman, which was briefly renamed Magic Circle. And that would soon undergo another name change. After that third renaming, they would quickly achieve fame. In 1965, after a night of drinking and inspiration among its members, the group Magic Circle changed its name to the Mamas and the Papas. Made up of singers John Phillips, Danny Doherty, Michelle Phillips, and Cass Elliot, by the end of that year, the quartet had already reached the top 5 with their hit California Dreaming. However, a serious internal dispute was threatening their continuity. The thing is, Michelle Phillips and Danny Doherty were having an affair. What was the problem with this? Mainly, Michelle was married to John, and also poor Cass had confessed her love to Doherty. If that wasn't enough, John had caught them in the act and in his own marital bed. But the couple eventually reconciled, and the band somehow managed to overcome it. Or at least that's how it seemed. By 1967, they had recorded 3 albums. However, Doherty turned to problematic alcohol use in his attempt to forget Michelle. And by April, Cass gave birth to a daughter, not knowing who the father was. The little girl, baptized as Vanessa Owen Elliot, helped her find some companionship in the midst of an overwhelming loneliness. The following year, under the name Mama Cass with the Mamas and the Papas, the single Dream a Little Dream of Me was released. That was recognized as the starting point of Elliot's solo career. It could be said that by that time, the Mamas and the Papas had actually already broken up, although the quartet continued recording albums. The reason was to fulfill their commitments to the record label, since there were contracts involved that obligated them. That's how, 3 years later, in 1971, they released their 5th and final studio album. Amid controversies over substance abuse, alcoholism and jealousy, and even anxiety and weight problems on the part of Cass Elliot, the band broke up for good that same year. Cass always maintained that a single factor had been decisive in triggering the breakup: her own desire to focus on her solo career, a career that, as expected, would turn out to be successful, although not exactly because of her vocal ability. After the Mamas and the Papas disbanded, Cass Elliot focused on her passion. During that same year, she also married the German journalist Baron Donald von Wiedemann, heir to a Bavarian barony. However, the marriage would end in divorce after just a few months. In her early solo albums, the record label insisted that the singer keep the name Mama Cass. However, the woman rejected this nickname and preferred to present herself as Cass Elliot, marking her independence from the group. It wasn't until 1972 that a new contract with Radio Corporation of America finally gave her the creative freedom to record using the name she had chosen. Although her records were praised for her vocal talent and unique style, they didn't actually achieve the same commercial success of her time. In the Mamas and the Papas, the singer began to receive more attention thanks to other aspects of her career, her live performances, and her appearances on television shows. Cass even starred in 2 primetime television specials. And during the early 70s, she was a regular guest on talk shows and programs. Among them were The Mike Dola Show, The Andy Williams Show, Hollywood Squares, The Johnny Cash Show, and The Carol Barnett Show. She was a guest host on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and appeared as a guest on the show another 13 times. In addition, she was co-host of The Music Scene on American Broadcasting Company and appeared in the first episode of The Midnight Special. She even worked as an actress, with a prominent role in the movie Puffed Stuff. And she had other guest roles in several others, such as the new Scooby-Doo movie, American Style, and The Red Sculptor Show. Although she didn't neglect her singing career, by 1974 she had released 5 studio albums, a compilation of her hits, a live album, and 9 singles. Among all the songs, her biggest hit was the already mentioned Dream a Little Dream of Me. Unfortunately, to the astonishment of her fans and the whole world, this promising stage would be abruptly interrupted. And that's how our story goes back to the beginning. In July of 1974, Cass Elliot began a 2-week series of solo concerts at the London Palladium in the United Kingdom. Immediately after the recital on the 27th, she started celebrating. The first stop was the 31st birthday of a well-known figure, Mick Jagger, singer of the Rolling Stones. The vocalist didn't drink much alcohol during this party and in fact left quickly. She then attended a brunch in her honor, where she began exhibiting noteworthy symptoms. A cough and some difficulty breathing did not go unnoticed among some of her close friends. Later, she attended a cocktail party where, despite her good mood, she began to look visibly exhausted and sick. Saying that she was tired and needed to sleep, she went to her room on the 12th floor of 9 Carson Square, an apartment located in the exclusive Mayfair neighborhood of London, which her friend Harry Nilsson had lent her. Her friend and dancer Joy Crowley was also staying there. She told him that she was feeling tired, so she intended to take a bath and go to bed. Crowley speculated that his friend might be hungry, so he made her a ham sandwich. An innocent sandwich, which would soon become a mocking rumor and go down in history as a symbol of ridicule. Cass Elliot was found dead in her room on July 29, 1974, at the age of 32. It was her assistant Dodd McLeod who found her after going to the front desk following several failed attempts to contact the artist. Later, the singer's body was cremated at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, California, and then buried at Mount Sinai Memorial Park. The first reports that emerged about Cass's death mentioned choking. It didn't matter that the forensic investigations disproved that, announcing that it had all been a heart attack caused by heart failure. Even after her death, Cass still had to deal with society's prejudices. The diets that Cass followed were so restrictive, and she pushed herself so hard in that area that she ended up putting her heart's function at risk. A heart that already had problems to begin with. As a result of morbid obesity, the vocalist was 1 meter 65 tall and weighed 110 kilos. But who was it that started the cruel myth that for years claimed the singer had died choking on the mentioned ham sandwich? The truth was only revealed more than 4 decades later, in 2020. The rumor had originated in the American film magazine The Hollywood Reporter. Sue Cameron, an entertainment journalist and a personal friend of Cass, upon learning of her passing, contacted the singer's manager with a single intention to have the opportunity to write her obituary. The man, named Alan Carr, was very clear with the instruction he gave her. "I see a half-eaten ham sandwich on the nightstand. Tell everyone she choked on a ham sandwich." The journalist didn't believe the story, but she just followed the request. She thought she was protecting her friend from a stigma that might even be worse than the one associated with being overweight. The one about drug use. But the forensic experts confirmed that no traces of drugs or alcohol were found during the autopsy. No traces were found of the famous food that went down in history, neither in his mouth nor his trachea. However, the damage was already done, and Cameron would live to regret having perpetuated that ruthless and mocking belief that spread unfairly. Not even the other conspiracy theories, which ranged from an FBI plot to assassinate her to a supposed pregnancy of the singer by John Lennon, were enough to overshadow it. The ham sandwich myth was widely replicated in popular culture, from Austin Powers to Lost, including shows like Family Guy. It has been the subject of many jokes in comedy routines, movies and songs by artists like Frank Zappa, Adam Sandler, Dennis Leary, Jack Black, and Robin Williams, among others. While Cass was alive, reality wasn't much kinder to her. Over the years, she had to fight a constant battle with her weight, a struggle that followed her since her youth and affected every aspect of her life. The image the media created of Cass was that of a chubby, motherly, and good-natured woman who was given the nickname Big Mama. She herself has said that she was not the one who created that image of herself, but rather it was the work of the public. I've been overweight since age 7, which sets you apart from others. Luckily, I was brilliant with that. I have an intelligence quotient of 165 and I was very independent. That became my lifestyle, she once said. Throughout her career, Cass was the victim of cruel, sarcastic remarks about her weight. As was evident, for example, in the main chorus of her most iconic hit, Creek Alley. Nobody gets fat except Mama Cass. But Cass Elliot was much more than her weight. Everyone knew her for her creative talent, her intelligence, her charm, her voice, her warmth, her ability to connect with people, her optimism, and her sense of humor. She was considered by many to be the most charismatic member of the Mamas and the Papas. And there are those who believe that the group would never have achieved the success it did if it hadn't been for her talent. Even so, as incredible as it may seem, her entry was almost denied. Do you remember the story we told at the beginning about the pipe that hit her on the head and changed her vocal range? And that was why John had hired her to join the band? Cass made sure to repeat that version in various interviews and media, but the truth is it was never true. People close to her said that she always had that voice, and it turned out that the story was an elaborate, politically correct excuse to justify Phillips's delay in bringing her into the group. That way, they were hiding the real reason for their indecision. He considered her too fat to be part of a profitable pop band. In the year 2024, Vanessa Owen Elliot, the aforementioned daughter of Cass, wrote a book about her mother, titled My Mama Cass, A Memory. In it, she did extensive journalistic work and addressed topics such as the singer's personal and professional life, as well as her internal struggles. My mother was a plus-sized woman with a vision for the future, who succeeded in an industry mostly controlled by men, she once said. The woman actually became a symbol of activism against weight discrimination, also known as fat activism. A month after her death, a group of feminists who supported this activism gathered to pay tribute to her at a women's meeting in Los Angeles. Dressed in black and holding candles, one of the activists from the underground fat collective said, microphone in hand, that the medical system was responsible for the artist's death by promoting weight loss, despite knowing the risks. Of course, Cass Elliot's contributions to music were widely recognized. The Mamas and the Papas were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. As a curious fact, 4 years after the death of Cass, The Who's drummer Kit Moon would die in the same apartment and under surprisingly similar circumstances. The sad incident, although caused by an overdose of medication, happened not only on the 12th floor of 9 Corsten Square, but also in the same bed and at the same age. Harry Nielsen, the aforementioned owner of the apartment, decided to sell it after considering it a cursed place. Cass Elliot left an indelible mark on the history of rock and pop in the 1960s, bringing to life, with her incredible voice, songs that became true anthems of the hippie movement and the so-called Summer of Love. She also became a symbol of struggle for many women, enduring the stigmas of a time when beauty standards were even stricter and more limiting than they are today. Her legacy endures as a reminder that talent is not defined by physical appearance, but by the ability to connect with others and to transcend. In her case, through what truly made her great, her immense artistic ability,